and that really, really slowed our pace down. We started to think we'll never actually catch him.
On foot, Robert is having an easier journey.
I started to get into a routine. I could walk a couple hours before the sun would get up. A brisk morning air was always refreshing. The stomach was not growling at all, it was still asleep.
Robert comes across a polluted billabong. He decides to look for cleaner water nearby.
I had remembered that Aboriginals would dig for water in dry riverbeds to find water that wasn't laying on the surface. And it was about 4 feet down that water started coming in.
It's a discovery that lulls Robert into a false sense of security.
Digging that hole and finding the water there, drinkable water, was a feeling of, the earth is going to take care of me.
It's not a nice water, but you just had to drink to stay alive. I wouldn't want to drink that water.
Now, with enough water for a week, everything is going according to plan. Until Robert drops his guard.
I was walking along looking for a path north directly to the McClarty Hills. I had been thinking about water and milkshakes and things that I would like to have, just generally daydreaming. And I realized that I had just missed the turnoff. It was a sinking feeling of, I'm off course now, and I don't know what's ahead. This is not part of the plan.
Robert is now 10 kilometers past the turnoff to Dragon Tree Soak. In order to conserve his energy, he makes the decision not to backtrack.
When I started thinking about it some more, I felt I was still okay. What was going on in my heart was more important to me than what was going on physically in my circumstance. So I just kept walking.
Still attempting to reach Dragon Tree Soak, Robert decides to follow some fresh camel tracks north. But leaving the Pegasus track will have major implications for the search.
This man was on a mission. He wasn't coming back out the same way as he went in. We all wanted to find him. We wanted to save him from himself.
At a certain point when all of this was going on, I decided that somebody needed to go over, and that would be me. There were so many conjectures and ideas about why he was there and what he was doing, and thought that someone should be there to set this story straight and have some facts and speak for him.
With the search team physically unable to follow Robert's trail into the scrub, Jeff Fuller is faced with a difficult choice.
My search party were trekking out in no man's land. We were damaging vehicles. We can't go any further.
Oh, very disappointing. Well, I think we're all a bit let down, but that's life.
Yeah.
Well, we done what we could, that's it. Finally went home.
And calling off the ground search was probably the hardest thing I did. If you're going to call off a search and leave a man for dead, then you better make sure you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
After a search, and if there's been no body found, there's always going to be unanswered questions. You really don't know, and maybe you'll never know. And you have to live with that.
Ben Martin and TV reporter Troy Hynam take Janet out to Fitzroy Crossing, the endpoint of Robert's intended journey.
I wanted to see if there was any signs of him. I wanted to look for myself for footprints. And if necessary, say goodbye. You know, if he was actually out there, that would be his last place, and I wanted to see what it looked like.
I think she had resigned herself to the fact that Robert was a determined guy who wanted to do something on a spiritual level, and that if that meant he died, well then that was the decision that he had made, and she had accepted that, and she was very, very stoic about it.
I did take a bottle of Tabasco out there because Robert is known for his love of sauces. And I know that if he was just walking by there and saw that bottle of Tabasco, he would say, Janet was here. He would just know.
It felt like an end point of something and a goodbye to someone that we didn't know.
I would say when the search was called off that no one believed Robert was still alive.
Well, looking neat, mate.
You look pretty good, actually.
It's the new me. You right?
Yeah.
Janet North spent the weekend meeting the men and women involved in the search in the Great Sandy Desert. She flies out for the US tomorrow. Troy Hynam, Golden West News.
Having conserved his water for days, Robert has all but exhausted his supply.
There was one drop of water left in that bottle, and I tried 4 or 5 times to get that thing out.
He decides to dig for more.
I dug down about 4 feet. Sand was wet, but it wasn't very. So I spent the rest of the day digging.
Increasingly desperate, Robert digs down 9 feet, but still hasn't struck water.
I finally realized that it was useless to keep going.
Severely dehydrated, Robert struggles on for 2 more days in 30-degree temperatures.
I would be able to go maybe a minute or 2 of walking before I'd get so lightheaded that I would either collapse or I would have a controlled sit down. I knew I wasn't going to find water that day, and it was kind of a wishful thinking that death would take me at that point. I remember laying on my back and looking up at the sky and just kind of waiting there and saying, you know, okay, this is the time, I'm ready. I realized that I was not going to die at that point. But what do I do? I'm not gonna die, but what do I do, you know?
Why won't you take me?